that could be depth pieces for them. I would just tell you, Colin, my sense of it is that they're not nearly done in putting skill talent around Tom Brady right now. I think that's probably going to include a tight end in the draft, and it almost certainly will include a receiver in the draft. And the receiver position was one that from the jump they were going to have to get younger at coming out of 2018 with Julian Edelman getting older. Chris Hogan obviously still a free agent. He was getting older. And so the plan has always been to address things at receiver. And even if Gronk had come back, they were going to be looking at this tight end class because it's a very strong tight end class for his potential successor. And so now that just becomes a little bit more important.
What'd you make of the New York Giants story that was leaked? Stories only get out if they're leaked. They are interested in Josh Rosen. I think they should have taken Darnold last year. They didn't. That's done. What do you make of that story? What does it tell you about the Giants? What's it tell you about Arizona?
Well, I would tell you, on the Giants end of this, there's no question that they are looking at the idea of replacing Eli Manning this year, or finding his eventual replacement this year. They have spent a lot of time looking at Dwayne Haskins. They have great institutional knowledge of Daniel Jones, who, of course, played for David Cutcliffe, who is basically a Manning family member. So they've got a good handle on this year's draft class. They looked at Josh Rosen last year. I don't think they're locked into the idea of finding Eli's replacement this year. They could wait for the 2020 class with Tua Tagovailoa and Jake Fromm and Justin Herbert coming out. But certainly I think the overriding theme here is the Giants are looking at this as a big time rebuild, which is part of the reason why they dealt Beckham in the first place. And as for the Cardinals, they have to be quiet about this because the minute that Josh Rosen's name gets out there, everybody knows what their intention is on draft day. And so if they want to leave their options open on draft day, if they want to leave the option of maybe trading the first overall pick open on draft day, then they have to at least be a little quiet about their intentions to trade Josh Rosen. So I do think that the probability is that they wind up trading Rosen and Kyler Murray is the first overall pick. But until they've actually locked in on that decision, it makes sense for them to keep things vague.
By the way, NFL, I think, is overreacting. I said this to start my show. Anytime in my life I've made a decision with heavy doses of emotion, it's been a bad decision. I think they're overreaching here. Video came out yesterday in the Pittsburgh Saints game that would have benefited the Steelers, hurt the Saints, and they would have probably not been a number one seed, where the pass interference was called and the league came out and said, no, on this play, we would have not called pass interference. The Saints wouldn't have had a first and goal. What do your sources say? What do your people? Were you surprised it was so almost unanimously approved to review PI?
No, because I think that was the one thing that the league came in and actually felt good about. They did a lot of research over the last month, the competition committee did, and they ran analytics on this. And here's an amazing number for you. Of the 50 most impactful plays that were penalty flags were thrown in 2018, 25 involved defensive pass interference. That's half of those plays. And so the competition committee went into the meetings knowing the change was coming as to pass interference. Where the compromise happened is allowing non-calls to be a part of this. I know the owners didn't want that going in and had to be convinced of it. And then finding a way to involve the replay official, which will happen in the last 2 minutes. And I can just tell you, there are people on both sides of this who feel like this is just the start of it. Like this is the first step to show other owners, some of the owners that have been hardliners on this, that this is not going to muck up the game. This isn't going to slow down the pace of play, that this is simply a mechanism to get it right. And on Monday, the 32 coaches voted 32-0 to put a more aggressive proposal in place and in front of the owners. And that would have involved both offensive pass interference and defensive pass interference, as well as roughing the passer and the defenseless player penalties. And it would have given the replay official oversight over those penalties for the entire game. So that would have, in effect, created a sky judge. And I can tell you that some people on both sides of this, owners and coaches, both believe that that's eventually where they're going to get, and that this is just a first step in getting there.
By the way, Gronk retired, sort of surprised me. Ultimately, he just didn't want to go through the grind. What do you make of it?
It doesn't surprise me. I still remember talking to him after the game, and when we got into it, he kind of explained how satisfying winning a championship was because of how hard the season was. And one of the hardest things for him over the last couple of months was the idea of jumping back into the grind of an NFL season and going back and committing to 6 or 7 months of doing things the way he did them last year. It was very, very difficult for him to get through the 2018 season, Colin. And we all remember how it ended. But November, December, he wasn't himself. He didn't feel great. He had a problem with his back. I think all of that was a big part of this decision, was the idea of locking into 6 or 7 months of this again was just too much, especially when you consider he had the bulging disc last year. And going back out there, he'd risk having a 4th back surgery, which could affect him later in life. Now, here's the one caveat I'd put on all of that, right? I said there how daunting it is, the idea of going through 6 or 7 months of this. Well, if the Patriots call in November, and now all of a sudden it's 6 or 7 weeks instead of 6 or 7 months he's looking at, maybe he sees that a little differently. But I do think the idea of going through the grind of an NFL season was ultimately what made him decide to walk away.
Good stuff. Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback, former Patriot beat guy for the Boston Globe as well. Good seeing you, bud.
You too, Colin.
Coming up next, I'm going to give you a PowerPoint presentation on Russell Westbrook. I'm not a hater. I'm going to provide answers because of something that happened last night. As any coach or general manager will tell you, the foundation of any great team is finding and recruiting the right talent. No surprise, the best teams are often the best recruiters. Same rule applies when it comes to hiring your top talent. You don't have to have endless resources to find it. You could have ZipRecruiter. They scout for you. One ZipRecruiter click sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards. They don't stop there. Powerful matching technology scans